Welcome to the Anti-Illuminati Party conference room here. It's Sunday night. It's about almost 8 o'clock in the evening. We are recording live. I am joined today by John McGuire. We are going to be talking about the world history of the hexagrams, especially the Star of David and the Israeli flag, and the history of this. We're going to be sharing this on our YouTube page, and I just want to introduce John McGuire. He's from Rochester, New York, and he is a Christian. He's a researcher, and he's one of my good friends. Anyways, I want to thank you, John McGuire, for joining us this evening and going through this presentation with us tonight.
Hello, Daniel. Good to be here.
Great. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you interested in the hexagram and the researching the history of the hexagram and the Israeli flag symbols and a lot of this interesting information that you've been learning.
Well, like you, I think, and many people, throughout my life so far, I've heard all this crazy stuff about how the Star of David is actually not even Jewish, and all this crazy nonsense that couldn't be true. But then, yes, it is when you research it. So then I decided I need to know what's going on. So it has a lot to do with other stuff to do with Israel that we could talk about at length. But I think this is a very easy true or false question. What is up with the Star of David? Is it Jewish? True or false? It's very cut and dried, unlike other issues that they try to muddle up about the Middle East. This one, they really can't. It's simple, and it also is the key to understanding a lot more. So I do believe with all my heart that this is the key for us to get a handle on, because we're giving a third of our foreign aid to Israel. We need to know a little bit more why we're doing that, because they're not the poorest country. They're like the 33rd richest country. So without further ado, we can get into it, huh?
Excellent. So anyways, we have a PowerPoint presentation here that we're going to go through. We also have a chat room, so if anybody's interested in sharing in the chat here on the Google Doc, feel free to do so. And so let's start out.
Sorry. If you want to share the link to the presentation on the chat so people can view it too, feel free. That's fine.
All right. Well, we'll do that definitely. We'll have to. We'll share the link here. Okay, so
full immersion experience.
Well, so anyways, it's copied to my clipboard here.
Awesome.
And somewhere along the line, what we'll do is we'll put this link, and we're going to post it in the chat room here. There. So now people can go to the chat room, and they can actually click on this link. We'll also share this link. I guess we'll share it on our Facebook page in our the Anti-Illuminati Party group party page. So people will find that link on our party page, and that'll definitely help for this presentation.
Yeah, because I spent a lot of today doing this, and yesterday. And I think it's, let's just get right into it then without further ado, I guess, huh? Does that sound good?
Yeah, I think it's great. And let me just get back to our page here. With one more place to put this, and then I will get right back to the room, and we can see as as I'm posting this link, people are able to watch this. But this is an actual live video feed that we're doing, and so they can see that we have some groups out there and see what the groups look like. And now we're going right back to the presentation. We're going to go through this PowerPoint presentation with you, and let's get started. Go ahead. And I see the name of it as the Poor Hindus. Why did you call it that? What's the point of the name, the Poor Hindus?
Well, we will find out on screen 2 why it's called that. So let's go to screen 2. And in screen 2, I say, the enlightened West turns Hindu symbols into bad ideas. And we can see some examples. The swastika, I think most people know that became a bad thing, but it was a good thing before. I contend the Star of David is not very different. It's part of the same school of thought, the Enlightenment. It's got nothing to do with Judaism, just like the swastika's got nothing to do with Germany. And actually, the Star of David has more to do with Germany than the swastika, ironically, to my knowledge. But they brought them all from India. And that's why I said the poor Hindus, because I don't see them as the most violent people in the world by far, and we use it to create violence. So I think that's bad, and I think it's bad that we cast them in a bad light by doing that. They become the victims of our evil ways. So that's what I'm talking about. Poor Hindus, but poor us, because we're being lied to right, left, and center. So anyway, and I have a list here of symbols of, you can see the symbols of real Judaism on the left-hand column. There's the burning bush, the Lion of Judah, the menorah, which fortunately at least that we see a lot, but that's a very new addition to Judaism. As you know, it's in the book of Maccabees. So it's not anywhere near the oldest Jewish symbol, but at least it is Jewish. Whereas, as we'll see, Star of David is in no way Jewish, or no legitimate way. And then you have the ram's horn, the shofar, it's called. And then we have, don't ask me to tell you what this is, it's some kind of bundle of some herbs there, like the fig leaves. And then underneath you have this hand symbol, which I don't know if you've seen this, but Jewish people, it's a priestly blessing thing that you do with your hands. Like the Spock, that's where Spock got the thing that he does with his hand in Star Trek. So you put them together like that, and it's for a blessing. So those are all very Jewish symbols on your left. If you're Jewish, you recognize them, I think, and if not, you recognize some of them. On the right, we have symbols of Hinduism, and I think we've seen almost all of these except maybe the fourth one there. That was new to me, but we have the circle of life, or flower of life, right? We have the swastika, the real one, which is square, not angled, and then we have the not Star of David. It's actually the Om symbol, which is a symbol of spirits, or Brahman. It has a wonderful significance, by the way. It's just been distorted in the West. It becomes something superstitious and debasing, and then murderous. And then we have the 5 elements, and there's a Western version of that I can show you. So it's kind of esoteric, but Indian people are very at home with esoteric things, as we used to be too, until we became weird and enlightened. And then there's the the lotus flower, and then on the bottom there's the dot on the forehead, which is something to do with the third eye, right? So you see the 2 columns, see how they're from 2 different cultures. So just try to make that very clear. And then we move forward, get into some of the details of the history. But first, we have the planet Saturn. Now, the planet Saturn's been around for 44.6 billion years, approximately. But we just recently found out that there's a hexagon on the North Pole of Saturn. And this photograph was taken by the Cassini, an unmanned spacecraft sent to the planet Saturn. And curiously, the hexagon actually came to Eastern Europe as a Saturnian talisman, so a lucky charm connected to Saturn, which we regarded as a god and a star. We didn't know what planets were, I don't think. So we got better telescopes. And then we have, at least for thousands of years, India has had the hexagram, sorry. Are you on the third, on the next, the chakra there? You see it? Daniel? Hello? Anyways, the Western, it came into the West, this yoga, and I need to revise that because it really is Indian, I believe. This is it, the hexagram with the outer circle and the 12 lotus petals. And the coloring of it can vary. The design can vary. It's generally green. The heart is the heart chakra. So next, also from thousands of years ago, like I said, it's the Om. It's a combination of Shiva and Shakti, which are and they combine to make Murugan, which I guess are some of the top deities in the Indian pantheon. I say Parthenon, no, pantheon. And that's from southern India, so we're talking far away. It took the Silk Road to bring it to the West. Then we have, I didn't have a picture for this, but in the 3rd or 4th century, so this is 600 years after Alexander the Great, 500 years or 600 years, they did find in a synagogue at Talhum, which is actually Capernaum, which is the synagogue that Jesus Christ is alleged to have preached at. Apparently it housed an encircled pentagram and hexagram as well. These particular Jews were extremely Hellenized, and it was in fact from this region that some of the southernmost ancestors of the Khazars actually came from. So they were very mixed people. As you can see, a lot of Jesus' disciples from here have Greek names, so we're not extremely Jewish at this time in this place, and especially 300 years later or so. There was a lot of mixing. Even so, though, even in this synagogue, it was only used for decorative purposes, not symbolically or liturgically, as any archaeologist will tell you who knows about this. And moving on, we have either it's a coin or it's a seal. This is from a little later on. This is from the Kazarian civilization, so around between 650 and 1048 A.D. This is a hexagram, as you can see, with an inner circle and an outer circle. This seems to be some kind of seal or coin of the realm, one of the two or both, who knows. We don't really have enough information because they changed and moved around so much at a certain point that it was hard to find anyone who knew. Such engravings as this were found on circular Khazar relics and bronze mirrors from Sarkal and Kazarian grave fields in Upper Saltov. However, rather than having been made by Orthodox Jews, these appear to be shamanistic sun discs. and that's according to the book The Jews of Khazaria by Kevin Allen Brooke. Got to give credit where it's due. Next, we have a Khazar or Kazarian symbol. It's as you can see, a hexagram outline with inner quadrants of different colors, red, blue, black, and white. The Khazars converted to Judaism, so-called, in a bid for neutrality. And I want to point out that this motive that they had, that it was more for neutrality than for religion, is borne out both by Jews and by Gentiles. So this is no opinionated statement I'm making. But the funny things happen along the way, as this heritage celebrating site unabashedly shows, and the site is Khazaria.com. You can learn all about Khazar culture on that website, be it Jewish or pagan, because their conversion is definitely a bone of contention. If they really, really became Jewish, or at what point they became Jewish fully, and what were their motives, and all kinds of things. So conversions are always like that, though. This isn't that unusual. The difference with the Khazars, though, is that they were stuck between, there was so much going on, so much bloodshed between Christians and Muslims, that if they would have become any of those religions, they would have, be honor-bound somehow to get swept up into it. So that factored in heavily, as again, all scholars who talk about this will say. And then later in AD 1008, we have the hexagram in the Leningrad Codex, the oldest surviving copy of the Masoretic text. And this is a basically discredited back translation sponsored by Khazars that famously distorts the Israelites' Greek Septuagint, which is the Bible Jesus read. It was Greek, not Hebrew. So they back translated it into Hebrew, and then taking great pains to compete. This is their motive, again, fairly clearly competing with the claims made by Christian and perhaps even Muslim clerics by delegitimizing, in the eyes of impressionable Jews, Jesus' otherwise plausible claims to fulfill certain prophecies, though arguably that cause was never airtight, at least not linearly or literally, but it was contagious, certainly on a mystical and spiritual level. We're talking about how the gospel appealed to Jews throughout the first millennium and the second millennium. But this was sort of a damage control, stopgap kind of move that they made. And as you can see, the Khazarian influence with the hexagram there, they were the Jews with the money and the power. They were the ones not under persecution, so they were certainly the natural people to be leaders, and they sort of did. So here we have just a flag of the Karamanid dynasty. That was 1250 to 1487. Here we have from the High Middle Ages, interwoven hexagram with outer circle, which is again your standard Saturnian talisman or protective metal, with similar pentagram, which is also known as a pentacle, on the opposite face. So in the front, they're heads and tails. So it's the tail side of the coin, which is what talisman are. They're coins, but with magical purposes. And there's all kinds of stuff online about how you can supposedly use them for health and whatever. And this is from the Middle Ages in the East. This is a Macedonian Orthodox church. And as you can see, we have a hexagram outline with Christ triumphant, which is an Eastern Orthodox. This is a detail on an Eastern Orthodox icon, the icon inside of an icon. That's very common. And so this is the Pantocrator, or Christ returning as all judge. Note the masculine and feminine hands holding the hexagramic icon. Balancing masculine and feminine is a constant theme in Christian temples, or churches as they're usually called. And here we have a sword presumably made in Damascus with a pentagram on it, hexagram, sorry. And this is a sign that a sword has been proved. And I do not know how far back that dates, so I just stuck it in where I felt maybe it belonged. Then in the High Middle Ages, you had alchemy and sort of the science as it was at that time. Nothing wrong with it, just that that was the trend then, to look at nature as 4 elements or 5 optional. Another optional element being spirit or ether, also called quintessence, right? That stuff that's everywhere. And it's sort of been rejected by modern science, but I should say by the scientific community, because scientifically there are some issues with the lengths they went to try to get rid of it, introducing general relativity, which is a bit debatable. But anyway, so this is from alchemy. As you can see, we have on the right-hand side a double hexagram. Not necessarily interwoven, but here it is. But it could just be a double hexagram. It is made by combining all the material elements. So it says, in Rosicrucian and Hermetic magic, the 7 traditional planets correspond with the angles in the center of the hexagram as follows, in the same pattern as they appear in the Sephiroth and on the Tree of Life. These are all Kabbalah, occult things that loosely related to Judaism but are not at all Orthodox Jewish, because we haven't found anything really Jewish yet until like a little later on. We might find in the 19th century we're going to find some things, but here it's all in the occult world, not in the Orthodox Jewish world. And it goes on, Saturn, although formerly attributed to the Sephirah of Binah, within this framework, nonetheless occupies the position of Das. That's according to Wikipedia, and they're quoting the Ritual Magic by David Griffin, the Ritual Magic Manual by David Griffin, page 31. In alchemy, the 2 triangles represent the reconciliation of the opposites of fire and water. So all opposites, it can be masculine and feminine, black and white, red and blue, just as long as they're opposites. I think it depends on the culture. And the hexagram may also represent the 5th element. So in other words, you have on the bottom of this, there's the wheel with 8 spokes, so that could be it, or also the double hexagram maybe too. Oh, and I think late Middle Ages, I couldn't get a date on this, but traditionally in southern Germany or Bavaria, an interwoven hexagram with the beer stein inside is a common tavern anchor. And it is a symbol for the tapping of beer and a sign for the Brewers Guild. And in German, this is called the beer stein or beer star, or Brauerstein or Brewer's Star. And also in the late Middle Ages, with Luther and friends, we had German cathedral architecture. This is one of about 3 cathedrals in Germany that have the hexagram prominently displayed in the brickwork. Here we have the Market Church of Hanover, Germany. And it says, in heraldry and vexillology, and also later printing, in the printing you see this symbol a lot. In the early books, it was a nice design they like to put on the books, the early printing press. A hexagram is a fairly common charge employed, though it is rarely called this is really called by this name. So in German regions, it is known simply as a star. So that's how common the hexagram is to Germans, that they just call it a star. Not a Star of David, not a hexagram, not a Star of Solomon or anything. In English and French heraldry, however, the hexagram is known as a mullet of 6 points, mullet being the French term for a spur rowel, that is the pointy part of a spur, which is shown with 5 pointed arms by default, unless otherwise specified. All right, so moving on. And then in good old America, we have the Great Seal, which has an obvious hexagram and then not so obvious hexagram displayed on it. The not so obvious hexagram you can see on the right-hand side, or if you have a dollar bill, it's on the left-hand side. They switched it around under Franklin Roosevelt. It spells Mason if you connect all the lines of the hexagram that I overlaid over the reverse of the Great Seal. The original designer of this seal was actually President John Hanson, who was George Washington's little-known predecessor. So if you want to look up John Hanson, you will have another rabbit hole to go down, as I hope all these slides have a lot of new information for many of us. And also in America, you have the Sheriff's Star. These are worn by sheriffs and marshals, and of course it's a hexagram, and often as shown here with an inner circle, which is, we saw it with an inner circle also in the Kazarian seal. Then in the 19th century, and I couldn't find a photo for this, the Russians designated a land for Jews that they could live in permanently without fear of legal action, because it's the ghetto mindset. And we're going to see that the hexagram really communicates the ghetto mindset in the 19th and 20th century. The hexagram experienced a revival in the 19th century throughout Ashkenazi land, starting in Prague, which is just south of southern Germany, and moving eastward. And they were used to mark off the large ghettos in Russia. In AD 1873 or 74, you have a coin, and this is in Morocco. It's a hexagram with an outer circle on the obverse or heads or front side of the coin. And this is a Moroccan 4 Falus coin dated 1290, AH 1290 or AD 1873 or 74. The green pentagram on Morocco's current flag also refers to Solomon. And Morocco is where you see a lot of the Sephardic Jews who are not the Ashkenazi and are really discriminated against by the Ashkenazi, really Kazarian establishment. Now we have, in the so-called enlightened modern Western world, symbols of Masonry, Theosophy, and Rael. It's a very new UFO cult. So you can see we have a lot of cults using these composite interlocking hexagram symbols. Masons almost always defer to Muslims on the mythologies they come up with, and this seems to be no exception. There are only 2 groups that insist that the hexagram is the Star of David, contrary to the historical record and the traditions of observant Jews. Many Raelians are vying to rehabilitate the swastika. They're going to have a lot of work to do rehabilitating the Star of David, hopefully. But anyway, note how the swastika points right, just as the Nazi one. but of course also the Indian one can point right or left. The symbol initially used by the Raelian movement was the source of considerable controversy, linked to a proposal to build the Raelian embassy. When they say embassy, they mean for UFOs, like in V, the TV series about the visitors, since it resembled a hexagram with the image of a swastika embedded in its center. Rael's Elohim voices then took aim at Lebanon. So in other words, what I'm saying is he got the call to move on to Lebanon when it became difficult with the Israelis. No surprise. And then, now we have finally come to the Israeli flag. Are you still with us, Daniel? Nope. Okay.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here, John. I'm just following along, listening. I'm learning as you're going through the presentation, and I'm rather enjoying this education here.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, I didn't know if it was still on or anything. Okay, great. Well, so this is from in 1891. At the latest, Herzl had sketched this. He had made a sketch. I'm not showing the sketch, but I can send it to you. You can ask for it. It's not that interesting. You can actually just do a search and find it. It's one of the few parts of his diary that are published because it's very difficult. Because he was the founder of Zionism, but he was very anti-Semitic, and people don't understand it. So because they try to keep it secret. But anyway, so this is his. He designed this. This was his idea. And as I show up above, it's a combination of, I call it the Ashkezari flag, because it's a combination of the Kazarian star in the middle, because it doesn't come from Judaism at all, and also comes from the prayer shawl, the traditional prayer shawl of the Ashkenazi. And the reason we know it's Ashkenazi and not Sephardic is because the Sephardic Jews' prayer shawl is all white. The Ashkenazi prayer shawl can be blue stripes or black stripes on it. So Theodor Herzl first sketched this Zionist flag in his diary. The flag was proposed in 1891. Noteworthily, he does not refer to the hexagram as the Star of David. Hard to know here if Mr. Herzl is being self-hating or just historically accurate. Judging by the rest of this, to say the least, controversial diary, my money's on the former, because he's very anti-Semitic. He may be knowledgeable about history, but he's extremely biased and self-hating. And then we have, from AD 1927, the original flag of the British Mandate of Palestine. And they did change it toward the end there, too, but this was for most of the time, from 1927 to 1948. And now we have some coins from 1933, which was a very ominous year for Jews. And we have on the front a swastika, a Nazi swastika, and on the back there's this star, as they called it in Germany, simply the star, the hexagram, and with the large outer circle around it. This is the coin the Nazis struck after their successful journey and 6-month stay in 1933 with Baron von Mildenstein, who became the head of the Jewish desk of the SS Security Service, or SD, in 1935 as a guest of the kibbutzim, that's the Zionist communes, and the Histadrut, which are Zionist unions. I had to look all those things up. So now here's finally something else we've seen before, and that is the yellow Star of David. Don't ask me why it's yellow. I have not looked into that. Also from 1933. And I want to read this. Having instituted concentration camps and signed the Havara Transfer Agreement in 1933 to Shanghai Jews to the sands of Palestine, also to Shanghai and other places they were sent. That's maybe where the term Shanghai comes from, I'm not sure. And having stripped all Jews of their citizenship, Adolf Hitler's Nazi administration obliged Jews to brand themselves with yellow-filled hexagram badges with fake Jewish letters, as you can see, fake Hebrew letters that spelled Jew in German. They also had them register/surrender their weapons in 1938, to go to the ghettos in 1939. The ghettos had been built earlier, but and to go to concentration camps. No, make that the concentration camps. Those were built a lot earlier, but they kind of sat there for a while because they were factories too. Throughout modernity, the hexagram represents Jewish zoning and ghettoization, beginning with the Pale of Settlement, as we saw, of the Ashkenazi of Eastern Europe, continuing under Hitler, and presently under the Zionists, who tried to oblige all Jews to abandon their nations of residence and their religion to live in the socialist, Khazar, terrorist-run state of Israel. Isn't that wonderful? That's a recipe for paradise on earth, I think. What do you think? Moving on. Now, starting in AD 1933, and it continues, in fact, as an alternative to the yellow stellated badges, in 23 November, Hans Frank, who is a very important person to learn about, he is Hitler's half-Jewish lawyer / governor general, who admitted in a dying note that Hitler had definitely been a quarter Jewish, and he proved how, ordered all Jewish Poles above the age of 11 years in German-occupied Poland to wear white armbands with a blue Magen David. So that's the Shield of David in Hebrew. That's what they call it, the Shield of David, or Magen David on it. And I want you to look and notice how closely the Jewish Nazis and the Zionists were collaborating. Look at how the Nazis, why are the Nazis using a thing that had been designed by Zionists? It's because they were working together, and there's a lot of proof for that. And it's shocking because it goes against all the lies we've been told. It goes against all the propaganda that we allowed the Soviets to sort of foist on us. So here's a close-up, and I'm going to read a quote. And this is about... This is actually about the use of the prayer shawl in the Star of David. He says, this is a Israeli Jew, dissident of the state. He says, the clearest example of the Zionist mindset is the flag of the state. Anyone who looks at that flag can discern, if you take out the star for a moment, a talit, a traditional man's prayer shawl. White fabric with two stripes of teklet, an ancient blue dye that was lost to be refound only in the end of days. A talia. I have two stripes, except Sephardic Jews. Again, this shows how the flag is very biased toward the Ashkenazi Jews against the Sephardic Jews. And they're either white or black. To them being the Jews, the teklet symbolized the redemption of the people of Israel. That was what they wanted. Here we've come to the land. Exile is over. We've come. We've come back to our roots. We're united. We're here. That was the teklet. Another point that is also very important, and I'm still quoting this Rabbi Raphaelov, it tells a message to the Jew. If until now you were required to wear your talit on you, it is no longer necessary. You can just put it on the flag and feel good as a Jew. Your talit on the flag. Everyone sees it. That's sufficient. No need to fulfill all the commandments in practice. Just connect with the national spiritual content, and that's sufficient. So if that isn't really encapsulating what nationalism is, and we have it in all different places. It's godless, and it just replaces God with a state. It's that simple. And moving on. In 1948, we have the flag of the Israeli Defense Forces. And so now we're just in the time period of the State of Israel. And what we see now is that secret societies want a taste of this. It's the first place in history where I start seeing the Masons especially use this more openly. With the crypto-kaganate of Israel established, the occult societies who value power, not truth, and who have long admired and emulated those who falsify ancestry and history for tawdry gain, are impressed, nay enamored. They want in on the spiritual decay action. In this age of political pseudo-Israel, you start to see the hexagram on Masonic paraphernalia. I'll give you a couple examples here. First, in around 1950, this is a Royal Arch Freemasons medallion, and I'm just going to read a quote from the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. And, quote, it says, "The interlacing triangles, or deltas, symbolize the union of the two principles or forces, the active and passive, male and female, pervading the universe. The two triangles, one white and the other black, interlacing, typify the mingling of apparent opposites in nature, darkness and light, error and truth, ignorance and wisdom, evil and good, throughout human life. Please note also that Masons are the most abysmal historians that you're likely to meet, and that there is nothing to indicate the hexagram was found within the structures of King Solomon's temple, but quite the contrary. There's no evidence linking it to Solomon, let alone to David. In fact, Masons, and only Masons, would think of dating the form in the Semitic world to before the 3rd century. So no archaeologists have anything about that. It's just a myth, which is what they love to do. History would make them look bad, I guess. And now, AD 2004. We have the Facebook logo, not logo, but the secret emblem, which is, as you can see, it's a covert, kind of hidden, tilted hexagram with a large outer circle. This is Facebook's once secret insignia that appears to be inscribed on the blue lining inside the inner circle's hoodies. And it says, "Making the world open and connected." Wouldn't it be great, when the deep state gets a Facebook account and posts nude pics of all their operations and plans? That would be good, I think, instead of them spying on us through Facebook, which basically we know they do. Basically, Mark Zuckerberg admitted it in his interview with the D8, All Things Digital. And that's where we found out about this insignia. We would never know unless he had kind of broken down and taken off his hoodie. In AD 2008, this will be the last picture. Again, in Masonry, we have an interwoven double hexagon with a large outer circle, as we just read the description of. And this is the Baden-Powell Royal Arch Chapter insignia of Irish craft masonry, which has been trendy as the Irish have drifted away from Roman Catholicism due apparently to extensive abuse by clergy, whose effects are then also compounded by poorly veiled media enthusiasm to kind of tear the church down, even to the point of making things up. So unfortunately, they had to make things up in order to really solidify or get more people to leave the Roman Catholic institution. The presence of the hexagon in recent Masonic emblems is highly suggestive of infiltration by the Parashim Society, in my opinion, in the occult power players of the British Isles in the years since the establishment of the see if I can pronounce this word I made up, Ashkenaz Zionist State of Israel. And that is all. I hope you enjoyed this, because it's over now. The end.
Well, I just want to say thank you, John. We appreciate the presentation that you had for us today.
No problem. Gonna get some water now.
Sorry, I'm just having some background noise here because I have two computers running at one time, and I'm trying to figure out how to shut it off. Okay, I think I just figured it out, buddy. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that, John.
No problem.
But, yeah, this is definitely going to make for a very good presentation as far as the YouTube. Anyways, yeah, I think what we can do on this is we can put it on there,